Hey guys, tonight we're slipping beneath the weight of modern noise and street lamp shadows to wander somewhere older. So old, in fact, it doesn't even have a name. The world you're about to enter doesn't have monuments or kings. It doesn't have gold coins or cathedrals. There's no Rome, no Babylon, no Moses yet, and certainly no internet. You wake into this soft world like a breath rising off river reeds. Mist coils through the tall grass. The air smells like wet stone and morning bark. Trees that have never known an axe sway above you, and the soil beneath your bare feet is warm from the breath of the night. You're in the days before anything had a title. It's not Eden anymore. If that ever really was a place, but it's not chaos either. This is the world of Enoch. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the dew, light shifting around you like it doesn't know whether to settle. You pass rocks that look like they might start humming at any moment, and trees whose roots seem to twist just slightly when you're not looking. This isn't just ancient, it's pre-language ancient. Enoch is somewhere ahead. He's not a prophet in the way modern stories like to imagine. No wild hair, no booming voice, just a man in a linen robe, weathered at the hem, walking softly, one hand trailing the tops of tall grass like he's listening for music hidden in the stems. His world doesn't have cities, but it has paths. Dirt worn by animal and man weaving through valleys where wild goats nest in the shadows and the sky seems impossibly wide. There are no walls, but there are boundaries. Unspoken ones, like where the trees start whispering too clearly or where the wind moves uphill. Enoch knows them all. He was born into this hush and never once tried to shout over it. That's what makes him different. While others chopped and chanted and chased things, Enoch walked. And something, maybe the earth, maybe the sky, started walking with him. Historians still argue whether Enoch was real, symbolic, or somewhere in between. Some think he's a figure woven out of hopes during chaotic ages. Others argue there really was a man long before the flood who understood the world the way only quiet people can. Enoch's gift wasn't magic or war. It was calm, a fierce, stubborn, restful kind of calm. And he noticed things. The way dew formed only on one side of the leaves. The way birds paused before certain rains. The way stones vibrated faintly just before a quake. He didn't speak about it much, but when he did, others leaned in. Not because he was loud, but because they knew his words only arrived when they were worth carrying. You walk with him now, watching the path rise gently. This is the land before plows, but not before dreams. Somewhere nearby, children splash in creeks, women grind grain between stones, and old men tell stories they half believe themselves. But Enoch isn't with them. Not yet. He's following a pattern he can't explain. You ask him where he's going. He doesn't answer with words. He just tilts his head to the horizon where clouds are shaped like something watching back. Mainstream scholars believe stories of Enoch were meant to bridge gaps. between men and angels, earth and heaven, ignorance and wisdom. He's called seventh from Adam, which sounds like a poetic excuse to place him close to the beginning, without quite claiming he saw it all. And yet, in the book of Enoch, a wild, not quite biblical text that most people never read, he's far more than a background figure. He's a messenger, a scribe, a dream walker who glimpses behind the veil. But that's later. For now, he just walks. You pass a tree whose bark peels like scrolls. You see patterns in the sky that look suspiciously like writing. A flock of birds cuts a symbol into the morning air. It might mean peace or watch. Enoch bends down and picks up a small, round stone, perfectly smooth, perfectly silent. He tucks it into his pouch like it's the start of something important. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, his voice sounds like the last echo before night. He once said, "To walk without hurry is to hear what others miss." You smile, your modern brain rebels at the thought of a slow day, but in this world, slowness isn't laziness, it's reverence. There's something in the air today, though. A stillness inside the stillness. Enoch feels it. You do too. The trees are holding their breath. Even the insects pause in their buzzing chorus. And as you follow him past a fallen log shaped like a sleeping lion, something shifts. Not outside, but within you. This isn't going to be a normal walk. The path narrows beneath your feet, dust turning soft, almost like ash. Not the burned kind, no smoke or fire nearby, but the memory of something ancient rubbed fine by time. Enoch steps lightly as if he's avoiding not just stones but thoughts. You glance up. The sun hasn't risen much, and yet the sky already pulses with heat. It's a dry warmth, not hostile, but persuasive. The kind that makes you forget to breathe deep. Enoch doesn't mind. He adjusts the cloth over his shoulder, woven in a faintly geometric pattern, and keeps walking. You do the same, trying not to trip over your own curiosity. There's a ridge ahead, and beyond it, a low plain dotted with what look like termite mounds. But they're not entirely. You squint and the shapes resolve into something stranger. Low altars made of stone and earth arranged in circles and spirals. Enoch doesn't pause. You do, because, well, someone built these, and someone cared. Historians still argue whether early ritual sites like this were religious, astronomical, or just community gathering places. Some think they aligned with stars, others with water sources. But the truth is, nobody knows. Enoch does, or at least he behaves like he does. He steps between the spiral paths without hesitation, never stepping on the stones. It's like he's memorized a dance choreographed by wind. You notice etchings now, not letters. Those haven't arrived yet, but symbols, spirals, animal shapes, repeated marks like raindrops caught in stone, and bones, tiny ones. Bird bones mostly laid out like offerings. Who built this? You ask. Enoch doesn't look back. Mothers, he says. Just that. And you're not sure if he means literal mothers or something broader. Creators, life givers. You follow. The ground hums faintly beneath your soles and the wind changes. It smells like roots and riverbanks even though you're nowhere near water. One of the stones looks freshly placed. You crouch beside it, smooth, river-rounded, unlike the others. Something's been scratched into it, a shape that looks like an eye, or maybe a seed, or both. You glance at Enoch. He just nods, like yes, that's how it works. In some versions of the Book of Enoch, he receives visions from the Watchers, mysterious beings said to have descended from the heavens to interact with humans. Some say they taught humanity things it wasn't ready for, metalwork, enchantments, makeup. Others say they corrupted what was already broken. Enoch doesn't seem worried about corruption. His world isn't divided yet, not into good and evil, not into sacred and profane, not yet. Everything is simply what it is. You notice another pattern, hair strands braided into loops and tucked under stones, leaves arranged like eyes, a tiny pile of teeth. Human, you don't ask. Enoch finally stops, not to speak but to breathe. You do the same. And in that silence you hear something not quite sound, not quite music. Maybe it's the memory of song, or the place itself singing with its bones. Mainstream archaeology would scoff at the idea. There's no measurable frequency, no decibel reading. But your spine doesn't lie. You're standing in a place that has been listened to for longer than stories have names. Enoch crouches and touches a stone with the palm of his hand. His eyes close, not in prayer, not exactly, more like sinking. You try it. Your hand is clumsier, the stone is cool, rough. You don't hear anything, but you feel it. A kind of low pressure, like standing too close to a waterfall. It isn't frightening, but it insists. You wonder if these stones marked seasons, or births, or places where someone remembered how to be still. A lizard scrambles nearby, pausing on a sunlit rock to blink at you with total judgment. Enoch smiles. They remember more than we do, he says, pointing at the lizard. Who, you ask? Things with no words. That tracks. You've barely spoken today, and somehow you've learned more than you did in a week of podcasts. You pass a circle of standing stones. One is cracked clean down the middle. Inside is not hollow, but lined with faint mineral crystals. A geode altar, someone new. Enoch doesn't touch this one. He bows his head slightly and moves on. You copy him. Something about this spot feels layered, like time folds over itself here. He walks a little faster now. The path widens, then splits. One side leads into shadowed forest, the other into open sun. He chooses the forest. You follow, grateful for the shade, but also aware that this forest doesn't feel empty. The trees don't whisper, they watch. Still, there's no fear, just attention. You pass hanging moss, gnarled roots, vines heavy with red berries that no one dares eat. Enoch gestures once to a tree with a mark carved deep into the bark. Two intersecting lines forming a crooked cross. What's that? You ask. Memory, he says, then adds, or a warning. Depends who left it. Scholars debate whether Enoch's journeys were metaphorical or geographical. Was he walking through actual forests, or traveling through layers of insight, each more abstract than the last? You're starting to think maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe this forest doesn't care what kind of walk it is, as long as you don't break the rhythm. You pass something carved in the trunk of another tree. Figures in profile. Long arms, tilted heads, watching something falling from above. You look up. Nothing. But your gut tightens anyway. Enoch touches your shoulder gently. "Not everything above is light," he murmurs. That's comforting. In a completely unhelpful way. The path continues. You're only a few steps into the next clearing when you feel it. The forest doesn't open gently. It exhales. And that breath, it smells faintly of metal and burnt resin, the kind of scent that feels ceremonial, even when there's no ceremony happening. Ahead of you, the trees form a rough circle, and in the center, them, not human, not quite divine, you see tall figures, statues, no breathing. Their forms shimmer faintly in the morning light, as though reality forgot to color them all the way in. Their eyes are too wide, their skin too smooth, too luminous in places where light shouldn't fall. The Watchers. Enoch doesn't blink. He walks toward them with the calm of someone who's done this before. You, meanwhile, are busy trying not to make eye contact with a being who may or may not be able to read your grocery list just by blinking. They don't speak. Not with mouths, anyway. Instead, you feel something like pressure behind your eyes. Questions, maybe. Memories that aren't yours. Visions of fire raining backward into the sky, of names that hum instead of being said. You grip a tree for balance. The tree doesn't help. It seems mildly offended you touched it. Enoch finally stops at the center. He raises a hand, not to wave, but to steady the moment. "These are not gods," he says quietly, "but they were once allowed to speak to them." One of the Watchers steps closer. Not steps, glides. They don't disturb the grass. You're slightly jealous. Mainstream biblical scholars believe the Watchers were fallen angels referenced in the Book of Enoch and other ancient apocryphal texts. They descended, they saw, and most controversially, they loved. Loved humans. Or wanted to. Or forgot they weren't supposed to. Historians still argue whether these stories are metaphorical warnings. Explanations for ancient technologies or echoes of real cultural memories lost to time. But here, right now, metaphor feels very out of fashion. The being stops in front of Enoch. Their faces smooth, unreadable, but their presence is overwhelming. Not evil exactly, just too much. They reach out a hand. Their fingers are long, impossibly so, and glow faintly at the tips. Enoch doesn't flinch. He places something in their palm. A feather. Small. Black. Ordinary. You don't ask where it came from. The being closes its hand. The air shifts. Something changes in the world, not outside, but inside. You feel it. Like a compass in your chest quietly realigning. The other Watchers remain still, watching. It's in the job description, after all. Enoch turns to you. "They don't give answers," he says, "only permission." "Permission for what?" you ask, immediately regretting it. "To notice." You wait for elaboration. That's the whole sentence. Of course it is. The Watcher who took the feather now tilts its head. A sound bubbles up. Not words, but something close to a lullaby played backward through wind chimneys. It's not unpleasant, just uncanny. You look around, you swear the trees are taller now, or maybe you're smaller. Either way, things aren't measured in feet anymore. Enoch kneels. You do too. Peer pressure, but make it cosmic. The watchers begin to shimmer more brightly, and then slowly they start to vanish. Not disappearing, but thinning, like watercolor being rinsed from canvas. Until they're gone. Enoch exhales. You forgot you were holding your breath. He stands, dusts off his knees, and glances up through the branches. Time to walk again, he says, as if that whole divine performance was just a coffee break. You follow, because what else do you do after that? Laundry feels like a downgrade. As you walk, you notice the light is different, softer, the air heavier with the scent of wet bark and moss. You pass strange markings in the earth, huge footprints that don't belong to man or beast. One of them has tiny flowers growing from the heel. You wonder how long they've been here. Does anyone else see them? You ask. Enoch shrugs. They're not hidden. People just forget to look down. That tracks. He steps over a large root and into a smaller glade. There, beside a pool of water so still it looks like obsidian, he kneels again. You join him. In the reflection, you don't see yourself. You see stars, not the current sky, a different one, older. Some constellations are familiar. Others seem half-finished, like the heavens hadn't finished sketching yet. Is that real? You whisper. More than most things, Enoch says. He reaches into the water, pulls out nothing, or something so transparent your eyes don't register it. He hands it to you. Your hands tingle, then go numb. Keep it, he says. It'll remind you what's behind your face. That's vague and unsettling, but you nod anyway. You walk again. Behind you, the water still reflects a sky no one remembers. Ahead, the path curves upward. You smell something sweet, like figs and ash. The next hill looks taller, and something's waiting at the top. You climb in silence, and the air gets stranger. It isn't heavier. It's more like it's thinking about you, watching your breath before it leaves your lips, gently evaluating your footsteps as if the dirt is taking notes. You've never felt judged by the wind before. There's a first for everything. At the top of the hill, the ground flattens into a shelf of dark stone, unnaturally smooth. There are no trees here, just sky, endless and swollen with light that doesn't come from a sun you recognize. It pulses, faintly, and then you see them. Children, but not children. They're smaller, yes, but that's where the resemblance ends. Their limbs move wrong, too fluid, their eyes too large, and their skin seems to flicker between colors, not like chameleons, but like they can't decide what version of real they want to be today. One of them hums. The sound is pure and eerie and oddly comforting, like a lullaby sung by someone who's never been a baby but read about it in a very old book. These are the children, Enoch says softly beside you. Born of angels and women. They don't belong to either world. You swallow. They look fine, happy even. One is drawing in the dirt with a stick. The shapes are geometric and spiraling, like fractals that forgot they were math. Mainstream fact. According to the Book of Enoch and other ancient sources, these hybrid offspring were called the Nephilim. Stories differ wildly. Some say they were giants, some say monsters, Others say savants who taught early humans to read the stars, make metal, and wear eyeliner like it meant something. Historians still argue whether the Nephilim were metaphors for imperial rulers, a way to describe hybrid cultures, or a memory of something very real that science doesn't have the patience for yet. One of the children looks up at you and smiles. It's not sinister, just old, like this being learned to grin from the first sunrise. They don't speak, Enoch says, at least not like we do. The child motions you over with 2 fingers, then points at a series of stones laid out in a pattern. They resemble no alphabet, you know, but they hum, literally. Each rock has a tone. You realize the child is playing a song. You crouch beside them, watching. And then, without meaning to, you hum back. The rocks change, your head spins. Careful, Enoch says calmly. Their games are more than games. You step back gently. The child nods approvingly. You just passed some sort of test, though the subject is unclear. Probably ancient weirdness 101. One child lies back on the stone, staring at the sky. You follow their gaze. The clouds above don't move naturally. They spiral in slow, deliberate rings, like clockwork made of weather. You feel small but not insignificant, just contextually humbled. These children, Enoch continues, were once feared. Now they're simply hidden. They live on edges, in gaps in the seams of what people believe and what they forget. That tracks too. One of the kids sneezes and the wind bends around it like a bowing tree. You do not want to know what happens when they get mad. Still, you're not scared, you're fascinated. The child who smiled at you earlier offers you a feather. Long, golden, weightless in your palm. You look to Enoch for approval. He nods. That one's for remembering. Remembering what? That you're part of the story too. Vague again, but it's bedtime, so you accept it. You follow Enoch as he begins to walk around the stone circle. There are carvings in the ground, not recent, not human. These symbols look like they were burned in with starlight. One resembles a spiral nested inside a tree. Another looks like an eye made of fire. Another, just a perfect circle, which is unsettling in its own way. These children, Enoch says, taught people things, or reminded them. He picks up a shard of metal half buried in the soil. It gleams with no light source. Blacksmiths say the first forge came from a dream. That dream came from here. You hear something behind you, a whisper, but the wind is still. You don't turn around, smart move. Enoch crouches beside a shallow pool of water at the edge of the stone. They're not dangerous, he says, as long as you don't lie. You go cold. What happens if you lie? He looks at you. You forget what the truth was. That's worse than punishment. You glance back at the children. They're playing tag now, but the way they move, they blur slightly like frames missing in film. One vanishes, then reappears upside down. Another turns into mist for half a second. You blink a lot. Do they grow up? You ask. Not like us. Do they die? No. Do they know? They understand what we call dying. They don't do it. Cool, 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 cool. You stare out at the land below the hill. The trees seem farther away, the air clearer. Time feels wobbly again, not broken, just humming a different song. One child waves goodbye. You wave back, sincerely. As you descend the hill, your mind is quiet. Too quiet. Enoch hands you a stone. For balance, he says. You pocket it, because sure. The trees greet you again. Their roots part just enough to let you pass. You swear one tips its leaves like a hat. Might have imagined that, might not have. The sun is still in the wrong place, but you no longer care. You don't ask what's next. Enoch will show you. You walk without knowing quite where your feet are going. They've decided to trust the dust. And Enoch, he just glides ahead like this is a perfectly normal afternoon stroll through a dimension stitched from forgotten dreams. The trees thin out again, not dramatically, just enough for you to realize you're entering a different kind of clearing. This one feels man-made, or being made. It's a space of intention. Something wants to be seen here. Before you lies a stone shelf, flat, smooth, slightly inclined like a reading stand for giants. And across its surface are scrolls, hundreds of them, carefully wrapped in skins, bundled with cords, stacked like loaves of bread made from memory instead of flour. These, Enoch says without flourish, are the writings. You nod, pretending you knew that. Of course, obvious. Nothing says casual Thursday like a hidden archive of pre-human knowledge. Mainstream historians agree that Enoch was remembered as a scribe, a man who walked with God and who was shown visions of the heavens, the flood, even the mechanics of celestial bodies. In texts like the Book of Enoch, he's described as receiving dictations from angels, writing down truths forbidden to the rest of humankind. You crouch and gently touch one of the scrolls. The texture is unfamiliar, like paper, but older and oddly warm. The script? Not a language you know, not even letters. More like lines that shimmer depending on your mood. You're either reading or being read. It's unclear. You're not meant to understand it, Enoch says. You're meant to remember it. Have I seen this before? You will, or already have. Time's weird. Thanks, Enoch. Super helpful. You carefully set the scroll back in place, but it doesn't land quite where it was. The stack shifts just slightly and reveals something beneath. A tablet made of dark stone, flat, unmarked until you blink, and then the surface swims. Images, fire, wings, oceans curling backward, a face made of stars, and, yep, a goat with way too many eyes. You look away quickly. You have to pace yourself, Enoch says kindly. Memory isn't just what you've lived, it's what your bones have been through. One scroll rolls open on its own, windless yet moving. You can see figures, drawings, no impressions, a being with a crown of fire teaching a circle of humans to plant something that isn't wheat. Another scene shows a glowing sphere in the sky, radiating tendrils downward into hands raised in awe. One more shows a person vomiting a river calmly. Fringe tidbit, some interpretations of Enoch's writings believe they're encoded with lost technologies. Ancient energy sources, stargates, or instructions for something you're better off not building. The term Enochian even became a part of 16th century occult language systems, used in scrying and rituals. Whether you believe that or just think old scrolls are cool, up to you. One scroll bursts into blue fire for a split second, then reforms. You decide not to touch anymore. These writings, Enoch explains, aren't history the way you think of it. They're more like the bones of possibility, what could have happened, what almost did. You imagine a library of events that almost existed. Wars never fought, worlds never flooded, loves that began but never finished. All written not as caution but as curiosity. Who reads these, you ask? Some watchers, a few stars, and occasionally someone like you. Cool. You're either an honorary angel or just deeply lost. You move through the shelves, noting the tiny symbols carved into the rocks around them. They aren't decorative, they're locking mechanisms. You step too close to one and feel your knees try to melt. You back up, fast. Those are for the ones we don't open anymore, Enoch says. His voice lowers slightly. Some scrolls aren't written in ink. They're written in memory, and memory can scream. Fun. You find a bench. Well, a rock shaped like it missed being a bench in a past life. And sit down. A scroll is already open beside you. Convenient. Or creepy. The scroll contains no drawings, just light. And as you look at it, you feel something wash over you. A name you forgot you once had. A place you swore never to return to. The feeling of holding someone's hand as they vanished. You breathe. It fades. You look up. Enoch is watching the sky again. The scrolls, he says, were never meant to last forever. Just long enough for the right minds to find them. And then what? They walk away different. You stand slowly. The scrolls rustle, like wind, like goodbye. You step backward, bow slightly, unsure if that's protocol, and turn to leave. The pathway you came from is gone, but Enoch isn't worried. He moves sideways, then up, then, not kidding, through a tree. You follow, because why not? Behind you, a scroll softly closes itself. You hope it wasn't about you. You squeeze through the tree trunk after Enoch. Yes, through it, and emerge into a quieter, darker space. It's not night, but it's what dusk would feel like if it decided to stop trying so hard. The air here is dense, not heavy, just thoughtful. You feel it pausing around you as though waiting to see what you'll do next. Enoch tilts his head. This is where the visions grow. Of course it is, naturally. You nod, trying not to appear too surprised by the orchard of glass orbs sprouting from vines that shimmer like wet thread. These orbs aren't hanging from trees, they are the trees. Each trunk splits into curves, spirals, then supports one or two delicate pods the size of a human head. Some pulse faintly, others twitch, one yawns. This is what you'd call dreaming, Enoch offers, gently tapping an orb that responds with a flicker of stars. Mainstream biblical tradition doesn't mention much about Enoch's post-Earth activities. But extra-biblical texts, especially the Book of Enoch, describe his journeys through multiple heavens, encounters with angels, visions of future catastrophes, and cryptic glimpses of creation itself. Some even say he wrote down not just what was, but what would be, and maybe what could be if no one paid attention. Here in the dream garden, time goes sideways. You walk along the rows, and each step introduces a different emotion into your chest. longing, relief, frustration at socks never staying up. It's subtle but real. Do people ever try to take these? You ask. They do, Enoch replies, and they usually regret it. You pause by a particularly vibrant orb. Inside it seems to hold a scene. A woman baking bread under a turquoise sky, a child laughing at nothing, a dog eating the sun. Simple stuff. Then the orb cracks. You flinch, but Enoch raises a hand. It's okay. That one's finished dreaming. The orb dissolves like sugar in warm tea, vanishing into the roots. Fringe fact time. Several traditions across West African and Middle Eastern mythologies speak of dream trees or memory roots that capture human experiences, storing them for divine review. These concepts, while not directly tied to Enoch, eerily echo what you're standing inside now. Suddenly, one of the larger orbs begins to swell. It floats upward slightly, emitting a low hum that feels like a lullaby sung by a river. You can look, says Enoch, but don't touch. Good. You weren't planning to. Well, maybe a little. The vision inside isn't a moment, it's a rhythm. A field of people dancing around a pillar of light. They aren't human in the typical sense, but they're not human either. Elongated limbs, soft eyes, golden markings across their skin. As they move, the pillar shifts from flame to water to wind. It's hard to describe. Enoch watches you watch it. That was one of the first dreams, he says quietly, from before words. You realize that what you're seeing isn't recorded memory. It's possibility made visible, hopes that never made it to language, feelings that history forgot how to carry. Why do these matter, you ask? Because every world, Enoch says, needs a place to keep its could-have-beens. That one sinks in. You pass a trio of cracked orbs that smell faintly of cinnamon and betrayal. You don't ask. Do angels dream? You ask instead. Only when they forget they're angels, he replies. It's usually temporary. You find yourself slowing down, feet sinking slightly into moss that wasn't there a second ago. The orchard seems to respond to mood, yours or the dream's. You're not sure. Historians still argue whether Enoch was meant to symbolize humanity's reach for divine knowledge, or serve as a warning against looking too far beyond the veil. Some interpret his visions as ancient allegories for astronomy, metaphysics, or simply metaphorical truths. Others think he actually went somewhere, and maybe never came back. You brush past a vine and it wraps gently around your wrist before letting go. No harm done, just a hello, or maybe a goodbye. As you round another bend, you see a small stump with a single orb hovering just above it. Unlike the others, this one is cloudy. You can't see through it. What's this one? You whisper. Enoch doesn't answer right away, then softly. That's a dream that never finished. Will it? He shrugs. Maybe. Depends who shows up next. You don't ask if that's you. You're not sure you want the answer. The air begins to lift again, just slightly. The orbs pulse one more time in sequence, as if breathing you out. You follow Enoch down a slope that wasn't there a moment ago, back towards something that feels more slid. Not quite real, but real adjacent. You glance back one last time. A new orb has appeared. It's pale blue. You don't ask what it's dreaming about. Some mysteries, Enoch says without speaking, are better left sleeping. You step onto firmer ground, or at least ground that politely pretends to be firm. It crunches slightly underfoot, not with gravel, but with knowledge. Scrolls, tablets, feathers, and bone fragments. Some are inscribed, some whisper as you pass. One sneezes, you keep walking. Enoch doesn't explain, and by now you've learned not to expect it. But you've stumbled into what could only be described as the archive. Not an archive, the archive. If dreams were rooted in potential, this place roots them in memory. Welcome to the cosmic filing cabinet. The scrolls don't rest in neat shelves. They hover, they spiral, they wait. You see texts that look Sumerian but blink when you stare too long. Some glow faintly in shades of regret. One is vibrating like it's trying not to laugh. The air smells of sandalwood, melted beeswax, and a hint of burnt toast. Enoch touches a floating shard of clay and murmurs. First contract between humans and rivers didn't go well. Mainstream tradition doesn't include this stop on Enoch's celestial itinerary. But some texts, like the Slavonic Book of Enoch, do hint at Enoch being entrusted with divine secrets, measurements of the heavens, the structure of the earth, the language of the stars, the kind of stuff you wouldn't want lying around in an unlocked drawer. Which oddly is exactly what you seem to be surrounded by. You pass a bundle of reeds bound with a cord of light. It hums when you look at it. Origin of bees, says the tag. You do not open it. Bees and you are on complicated terms since Madame Lenoir's flowers, remember? Some scrolls are unreadable, not because they're in another language, but because they appear blank until you feel the meaning. You brush a finger along one and instantly recall a childhood you never had. Sunlight on copper sand, chasing a blue bird that kept turning into your mother. You back away slowly. Enoch raises an eyebrow. You looked into a sentient metaphor, he says. They're clingy. You spot a book etched in alternating lines of gold and coal. It's labeled What the Moon Remembers. Inside, figures spiral like dance steps across dark pages. One turns, pauses mid-pirouette, and nods at you. Can I take any of this? You ask. Enoch gives a half smile. Sure, if you're okay with forgetting something else in return. Ah, classic cosmic balance. You move on. Historians still argue whether Enoch's legacy represents the preservation of hidden knowledge or the divine consequence of curiosity. Was he entrusted because he asked the right questions, or because he knew when not to ask? Some scholars insist these ancient descriptions are just allegory for evolving consciousness. Others suspect Enoch was one of the first archivists of all. The ceiling, or what might be the ceiling, is an endless sky of ink. Occasionally, constellations rearrange themselves into script. You see the word "if" appear briefly and then vanish. A helpful reminder. Enoch stops beside a long, flat panel resembling a desk. Upon it rests a single feather, stiff with age but still vivid white. He doesn't touch it. That's from the angel who first wrote music into wind. he says. You lean closer. The feather quivers slightly as if remembering something complicated. You don't hum. It hums for you. There's a doorway on the far side, but no handle, no hinges, just an arch of stone with a gap. Carved along the edge, memory enters softly. So is this where it's all kept? You ask. The big stuff. Like the rules of existence? Enoch shakes his head. No, that's upstairs. You blink. There's an upstairs? He looks at you flatly. Of course there's an upstairs. This is bureaucracy. You nod solemnly, as one must when faced with divine filing systems. Just before you leave the archive, you catch a glimpse of a record being written, ink appearing mid-air onto a floating parchment. It's describing you, right now, word for word. You wave awkwardly. It does not wave back. There's a final shelf near the exit. It holds a single object, a small lump of clay shaped roughly like a heart. It beats once, softly. What's that? You whisper. Enoch considers it. That's the first time anyone wondered what love might mean. You stare. He nods. And we're still filing the follow-ups. You follow him out, mind rattling slightly. Not from noise, but from the gentle clunk of thoughts being rearranged in your mental cabinets. Behind you, the archive returns to its timeless hum. Somewhere a feather sighs. The next passage feels different, less architectural, more elemental. The edges of the path blur into something like mist, except it smells faintly of jasmine and old stone. You glance at Enoch, who now walks barefoot. Naturally. Where are we going? You ask, half expecting a riddle. Somewhere people stopped looking, he replies, not quite helpfully. You pass into a space that isn't really a room. It breathes. The floor ripples like shallow water under silk, and the walls, if you can call them that, glisten like oil and starlight. It's as if you've wandered into a memory that isn't yours. At the center sits a pool, not water, not quite. Its surface is perfectly still but contains swirls that shift like ink stirred by thought. Enoch kneels beside it. This, he says, is the unwritten. You peer in. The surface doesn't show your reflection, only the ideas that haven't been born yet. You see a child's laugh shaped like a spiral, a tower made of whispers, a battle fought using shadows and regret. One swirl resembles your favorite dream, except it's missing the ending. It waits. Historians still argue whether the figure of Enoch in ancient texts symbolized divine authorship or protected ambiguity. Some suggest Enoch's ascension represents the sealing of cosmic knowledge. The end of an age when humans could write their own myths without celestial footnotes. Others believe he carried away the last questions we were ever allowed to ask out loud. Enoch dips a finger into the pool. No splash, no ripple, just silence that hums. This is where they used to gather, he says. The Watchers. The ones who taught men language and mathematics and unfortunately eyeliner. You blink. Wait, eyeliner? He shrugs. The Book of Enoch doesn't specify brands, but the fallout was divine. You grin despite yourself. Around the pool, faint glyphs glow on the floor. You crouch and read one. It seems to shift as you stare. Now a bird, now a word, now a feeling. The script is ancient and emotional. "I don't recognize this writing," you murmur. "No one does," he replies. "It's the language of intention." "Do people still speak it?" He smiles sadly. "Every time someone forgives without being asked." The pool begins to shimmer with colors you've never named. Some of them feel soft, others feel sharp. One tastes like citrus and longing. You reach out but stop yourself. Enoch nods approvingly. That's the right impulse. Curiosity with restraint. A book lies near the edge of the pool. Its cover is translucent and its spine hums like a lullaby. It's locked. "Why's that one sealed?" Enoch answers without looking. "That one's about what would have happened if Cain had said sorry." Oh, the room, if you can call it that, shifts again. No footsteps, no sound, only presence. You become aware that someone, or something, is watching, but not in a threatening way. Like being weighed gently, measured with fondness, evaluated by affection itself. You try to act natural. You fix your collar. "I'm not in trouble, right?" Enoch smirks. "No more than usual." A scroll nearby unrolls itself. It shows a tree, its branches looping infinitely. On each leaf is a single word, some glow, others flicker out. You recognize your own name etched on one, pulsing softly. "Is this some kind of divine Facebook?" Enoch snorts. "More like the original comment section, except kinder." You wonder aloud, why is it still being written? He gives you a look, because you're still walking. You nod, not sure whether to be comforted or very, very concerned. There's a final vision before you leave. A woman seated beside the pool, her hair braided into galaxies, her eyes two moons filled with questions. She lifts her gaze and meets yours. For a moment you feel weightless. "Who is she?" you whisper. Enoch's voice is gentle now. "That's the first person who ever asked why." You blink, but when you look again, she's gone. You exit slowly, feeling like you've been holding your breath for centuries. Your mind hums with symbols, feelings, and echoes of thoughts that have yet to arrive. Enoch walks beside you, quiet now, like a librarian who knows you've already peeked at the good stuff. Behind you, the unwritten returns to stillness, guarding every possibility yet to be penned. The next corridor leads downward, not in the metaphorical, dreamy way you've come to expect, but literally. The ground slopes under your feet, the stone turning rougher, older, more primal. The air gets cooler, like a cave that remembers snow. "This path wasn't made by men," Enoch remarks. You raise an eyebrow. "Then who?" He gestures vaguely. "Beings who didn't need stairs." You squint into the dim passage. That's comforting. At first, the descent is quiet, but soon you notice carvings, deep gouges in the walls that swirl in looping patterns. They aren't decorative, they're coordinates, not spatial ones, but emotional. As you walk, you can feel the intent embedded in the grooves. This one remembers grief, that one sings with wonder. Over there, longing spirals like ivy. You pause beside one particularly intricate swirl. It feels like homesickness, but not for any place you've ever known. Enoch stops as well. This section, he explains, is the archive of forgotten emotions. You frown. Why would anyone forget an emotion? Because it hurt too much, or because it didn't fit the story we told ourselves, or, he smiles faintly, because some feelings only exist between stars. You tilt your head. What does that mean? He shrugs. Ask a nebula. At the bottom of the path is a stone gate. No keyhole, no handle, only a small indentation in the shape of a breath. You exhale into it. The door sighs open. Inside is a circular room lined with mirrors, but none of them show your face. Each one reflects a different version of you, yourself as you might have been, could have been, or never dared to be. One wears a crown made of broken promises. Another carries a lantern glowing with truth. A third hums a lullaby and holds a child made of ink. Are these alternate timelines? You ask. Enoch shakes his head. No, just the yous you left behind. Historians still argue whether Enoch's journey represents actual movement through realms, or an inward unraveling of identity. Some propose the Book of Enoch is less a record of celestial events and more a cartography of spiritual psychology. Others counter that the text offers literal insight into pre-flood cosmology, stargates, watchers, and all. You step toward one of the mirrors. The version of you inside smiles, tired but content. They're gardening. You don't even like gardening, and yet you feel a pang of envy. Why does this one look happy? You murmur. That's the version of you who learned how to rest. You touch the glass and it ripples, not like water but like memory. A low vibration travels up your arm. Your breathing slows, your pulse sinks with something deeper, ancient. A scroll unrolls on the floor behind you, its pages blank. Enoch picks it up. This was left for you, he says. I haven't written anything yet. He taps the parchment. Exactly. You glance back at the mirrors. The one with the crown shatters. No sound, just a soft flurry of glass like falling feathers. You jump. What was that? Old stories collapsing. Is that bad? He shrugs. Only if you were attached to the ending. You nod, still staring at the shards. They dissolve into mist and vanish into the floor. Behind another mirror, you spot a pair of wings. Your reflection doesn't move, but the feathers flutter as if breathing. Wait, is that me? Enoch's expression softens. It's what you once dreamed of being. A messenger? He nods. A bridge between what is and what aches to be. You swallow. Do I get there? He looks at the scroll again. You're walking. You exit the chamber with a strange calm. Not the peace of answers, but the stillness that comes from learning to carry your questions with grace. You don't need all the mirrors. You only needed to know they existed. The slope levels out and the tunnel ahead grows brighter. You sense you're close to something, less a destination than a realization. Enoch doesn't say much, just hums a low tune that tastes like cinnamon and old paper. Do all paths lead here? You ask. No, he says, but this one always did. You glance over your shoulder once. The mirrored room is gone, as if swallowed by the ground. But you carry the echoes, reflections tucked behind your eyes. Ahead you see light, not sunlight, something older. It pulses gently like a heartbeat that never stopped. You walk toward it, scroll in hand, wondering what your next sentence will be. The light doesn't blind you, it invites you. It doesn't blaze but hums, a warm, steady breath that brushes your skin like sun through linen. You step forward into a chamber shaped like an eye. At its center is a table, not wood, not stone, just surface. Almost like water, but it holds. Enoch is already seated across from you. "This is the memory well," he says. "It remembers things before they're forgotten." You sit, though there's no chair. The floor accepts you. Everything here does, without question. No one asks who you are. They already know, or they trust you to decide. You place the scroll on the table. It doesn't unroll. It waits. Around you, the walls begin to flicker with slow-moving shapes, scenes that aren't quite visions, not quite dreams. You see towering cities made of folded sky, trees that bloom in reverse, a mother kissing her child goodbye in a language made only of scent. "These are the days before days," Enoch murmurs. "The age when stories were still raw." You nod, because somehow that makes perfect sense. Mainstream scholars agree the Book of Enoch describes a kind of proto-civilization, older than the deluge, untouched by recorded history. But others argue it encodes archetypes, universal patterns buried in myth. The Watchers aren't aliens, they say, but metaphors for fallen curiosity. The flood wasn't punishment, but reset. Historians still argue whether this space, this chamber of remembering, was ever meant to be literal. But here you are anyway. The surface before you shifts. Images begin to rise, slow and thick like syrup. You at age 9 holding a rock like it's a secret. A loved one you never properly said goodbye to, smiling without urgency. A bird, maybe a hawk, maybe not, flying in a loop that never ends. "These are mine?" you ask. Enoch nods. "Yours borrowed from the larger story. Some parts we write, some parts write us." The table flickers. A new shape appears. A figure in robes. Not Enoch, not you. Their faces made of stars. You try to look away, but can't. "Who?" "The witness," Enoch whispers. "They observe the things no one else does. And they forget nothing." The witness raises their hand. The room stills. A moment later, your scroll unfurls just a little. A single line appears. You lean in to read. It's your handwriting, and it says, "You remembered anyway." You're not sure what it means, but your throat gets tight. The witness vanishes. The image drips back into the table. "You've seen a sliver of the library," Enoch says. "Now it's time for the skylight." You blink. "The skylight?" He smiles. "Where we remember upward." You both rise. This time the light leads you not forward but up. A staircase unfurls, petals made of wind, edges stitched in gold. You walk slowly, your breath echoes, your thoughts slow. As you climb, your scroll rolls itself tighter. It's lighter now, but feels fuller. You don't look at it again. Above you, the ceiling begins to dissolve. Stars blink through. "Is it night?" you ask. Enoch shakes his head. "It's always been night here." You reach the top step and find yourself on a platform, open to the cosmos. You aren't floating, you're grounded, but gently. Around you swirl constellations that don't exist in any modern sky. One looks like a harp weeping starlight. Another resembles a hand reaching into a well. You recognize none of them, but they all feel familiar. Enoch joins you. He lifts his hand, and one constellation answers, pulsing once. "That's yours," he says. You stare. That can't be a real one. Real doesn't mean mapped, it means remembered. You trace the shape in the air, it moves with you like a tether made of quiet. The wind here is soft, like it's brushing you just to say hello. You close your eyes. For a moment you forget why you came, but not in a bad way. It's a forgetting that lets you breathe. Will this fade when I leave, you ask? Not fade, Enoch says. Replant. You'll carry pieces in your dreams, in your silences, in the way your hand pauses over a blank page. You sit again. This time it's grass beneath you. Cool, fragrant, not wet. You didn't notice it before, but it was always there. You lie back. The sky arches above. Your heartbeat matches something far away. The stars lean closer. One blinks out. Not gone, just asleep. You smile. A soft voice in your head. Not Enoch's, not yours, whispers. You were always allowed to remember, even when they told you to forget. And for the first time in this long, strange, gentle journey, you believe it. You don't fall asleep. You glide, like a stone skipping across silk. The sky doesn't turn darker, it deepens. The stars don't fade, they settle in, as if politely dimming the lights for your sake. Enoch remains nearby, not speaking. He's not watching you, but he knows exactly where you are. You feel it in your chest like a thread connecting two distant buoys on a very calm sea beneath you. The platform of grass turns to something else, not cold, not hard, just narrative. That's the only word that fits. You're now walking again, though you don't recall standing. You pass an archway shaped like an open mouth. Beyond it, more memories. But they're not yours. Whose are these? You ask, brushing a scene that shimmers like soap film. People from before people, says Enoch, almost distracted. Stories that never got a language. You nod. Of course. To your left, an enormous structure rises, a spire with no base, like it's hung from the sky by invisible strings. Its surface flickers with symbols, half of which feel vaguely familiar. One of them looks like a seed, another resembles an eye with wings. Mainstream scholars acknowledge that the Book of Enoch, especially in its Ethiopic versions, alludes to celestial architecture, cities or realms where beings of knowledge dwell. But historians still argue whether these were intended as metaphorical heavens or literal spatial dimensions. Some even suggest Enoch describes early models of the multiverse, long before string theory gave it a name. Fringe thinkers say the spire you now face is one of those models, an attempt to visualize knowledge without gravity. Something grown, not built. As you move closer, the surface reacts to you. A swirl of symbols follows your hand. You trace a path and the spire lights up, not in brightness but in tone. Each mark hums a note. It's not a song, it's a suggestion. You listen. The notes aren't just musical, they're emotional, memory chords. You feel the sorrow of someone who once forgot their own name. The joy of a child laughing at their first shadow. The weird, itchy relief of putting on dry socks after rain. How the spire knows about socks you don't question. Enoch raises a brow at you. You want to go in? You hesitate. Should I? That's not how this works. He shrugs. If you ask that, you're already halfway through the door. He's right. Inside the spire isn't hollow. It's folded, like walking into a book made of mirrors. Each panel reflects something close, but not quite. You see yourself, but in one version you're younger. In another, older. In one you wear robes, in another armor, in one you're just mist. These are potential selves, Enoch explains. They don't judge, they just remember. You linger on the mist self. It doesn't look unhappy. There's a passage spiraling upward, each step made of woven stories. As you climb, the reflections change. Now they're not just you. They're people who brushed your life like breeze through a window. That teacher who made you feel smart. That neighbor who gave you fruit for no reason. That voice on a late-night call that said, "I'm still here." You breathe slower, not from tiredness, but from fullness. At the top of the spiral, there's a single stone, perfectly round, slightly warm, sitting in a bowl shaped like a question mark. What's this? A memory that hasn't happened yet, Enoch says. You don't touch it. Instead, you sit beside it. Just sit. That's enough. Somewhere in the walls, a rustling begins. Not leaves, not paper, something in between. The spire is waking up, or maybe you're sinking with it. Either way, the walls now begin to show a new set of images. The world as it could have been. A river that bends upward, a marketplace where language is traded like fruit. A garden that grows by forgetting. These were dreams, Enoch murmurs. The Watchers left them behind either by accident or mercy. Historians still argue whether the dreams mentioned in the Book of Parables are literal celestial messages or poetic devices. Some say they predict apocalypse. Others believe they encode ancient astronomical data. But in this space, they feel like postcards from a cousin you never met. You step down, back through the folds. Outside, the sky has changed again. It's no longer night or day. It's something else. A color that doesn't exist in the Crayola box. You try to name it. You fail. You don't mind. Enoch is waiting with 2 mugs of something steaming. It smells like thyme and a little cinnamon. You sip. This place, you say. It's not part of Earth, is it? It was, he replies. Then Earth changed. You don't ask how. You're not ready. As you finish your drink, a door appears, wooden this time. Simple, human. The kind of door that could lead to a closet or a chapel or a goodbye. Enoch nods toward it. That's the next part. You hesitate. He smiles, not unkindly. You'll come back, one way or another. Everyone does. You reach for the handle. The handle feels like bone warmed by sun, not in a creepy way, just lived in. You turn it gently. The door doesn't creak. It sighs. You step through, expecting more dreams, more symbols, more cosmic riddles, but instead you're standing on Earth again. Real, messy, unfiltered Earth. A patch of tilled soil clings to your boots. Chickens cluck somewhere to your left. A fig tree rustles on your right. In front of you, a hut. Round, thatched, ordinary. Except it isn't. Because no one lives here. Not anymore. This is a memory left in the wild, and yet as you step forward, you know exactly whose it is. Enoch's. Inside the hut, everything is neat. Not obsessively so, just cared for. You can still smell the last time he cooked here. Roasted barley, wild honey, maybe a few acacia leaves tossed in for bitterness. The fire pit is cool, but the ashes are recent. He was here, just not now. Historians still argue whether Enoch was ever a real physical figure or a symbolic placeholder, a name given to anonymous wisdom over time. But the more you look around this space, the less symbolic it feels. Everything here is too specific. The notch in the stool, the threadbare mat woven in an unfamiliar pattern, the hollowed-out stone with a single feather tucked inside. No metaphor carves its initials into a wall. You sit for a moment on that stool and the air thickens. Not ominous, just aware, like the world's holding its breath. And then you see him. Not in the doorway, not in the corner, but in the space between one blink and the next. One moment, the room is still. The next, Enoch is sitting across from you exactly where he belongs. Holding the same silence he always does. Like a shepherd holding a staff made of time. "You found it," he says. Not with surprise, just with the soft confirmation that the story has circled back. You nod. "Was this your home?" "One of many," he shrugs, "but the only one that ever grew." You glance toward the wall. Vines have started creeping in. You're not sure when they arrived. "Do you miss it?" you ask. "I don't remember how to miss," he replies. "But I remember that I once did. That's close enough." The two of you sit, not needing to fill the space. Outside, the chickens still cluck. One pecks at something shiny, probably a coin. You wonder if that coin has a date on it. Wouldn't that be hilarious? A pre-flood drachma, minted before time became regulated. You and Enoch sip from the same gourd. The drink inside is cooling, slightly fizzy, tastes like memory and mango. "So what happened?" you ask. "With what?" "With the world." He sighs. Not in sadness, in weariness. It remembered too much, too fast, and forgot the right things. That's cryptic. "I know," he grins. "I've had a lot of time to practice." You lean back, looking through the open hut window. The horizon is different now. It curves more steeply, like the planets flexing. And there's a glow. Not from sun or moon, but from something in between. "I used to watch sunsets from here," Enoch murmurs. "But they weren't like yours." "Why?" "They happened slower. Or maybe I just sat longer." You wonder what it means to outlast your own sunsets. There's a wooden box in the corner. No lock, no hinges. Just a lid that lifts with a quiet whoosh of old air. Inside are folded scraps of bark cloth, each with symbols painted in reddish ink. They aren't quite Hebrew, not quite pictographs, but they feel readable if you stop trying to read. One of them glows faintly as you touch it. "Can I take it?" you ask. "You already have," Enoch replies. "That's how you found this place." You blink. Of course. Outside the hut, the fig tree begins to shimmer. Not in brightness, but in attention. The way something shimmers when the universe decides to eavesdrop. You both step outside. The ground is dry, but not dead. The sky is soft, like it's trying not to wake the stars, and in the distance, Beyond the ridge, you hear something low and vast. "Is that the flood?" you whisper. "Not yet," he says. "That's just the memory of water." Mainstream texts note that Enoch walked with God, then he was no more. Some interpret this as death, others ascension, but some fringe accounts suggest Enoch didn't leave. He simply shifted places, became the crack in the timeline where understanding leaks in. The sound grows louder. It's not rushing, it's waiting. You and Enoch sit beneath the fig tree. "Will it come?" you ask. "Eventually." He nods. "Everything floods, stories, cities, emotions. You just have to decide what you're willing to rebuild." The feather from inside the hut floats gently down beside you. Enoch doesn't speak again. He doesn't need to. The sky tilts, the gourd empties, and somewhere in your pocket that scrap of glowing cloth begins to warm. The warmth from that cloth doesn't fade. It pulses. Not fast, not hot. Just enough to remind you that some stories keep breathing long after the pages close. You reach into your pocket and press it between your fingers, and for a moment the world doesn't feel like it's made of matter. It feels like it's made of sentences. When you look up again, the hut is gone. You're standing instead in a narrow room. No walls, no windows. Just shelves upon shelves of worn scrolls, chipped clay tablets, and strips of leather darkened with age. Some are rolled, others folded. None are labeled. But you don't need labels. You know exactly what this is. It's the library that forgot to burn. Some call it myth. Others say it's a metaphor for lost knowledge or the collective memory of a world that barely survived its own birth. But here it is, real, dust-scented, impossibly present. And in the center, a single desk, its top worn smooth by more elbows than centuries. You approach it, slowly, like if you breathe too hard it'll vanish. And on that desk, a single book, bound in bark, no title. You open it, and there he is again. Enoch, not in person this time, in ink. The first page is filled with what looks like stars. Not drawings of stars, but the actual sky, somehow pressed flat and pinned in place. It shifts as you move your head, like a glittering secret. Beneath it, a line written in a language that doesn't exist anymore, but that your bones remember. For the one who asked the right questions. You keep flipping. One page is a map of somewhere you've never seen. Another is a sketch of the Watchers, winged and weary, some kneeling, others fleeing. Someone's written tiny notes in the margins. One says, "Tell them not to look up on the third day." You don't know what it means, but it's probably good advice. You reach a page that doesn't have writing at all, just a handprint. It's not ink, it's ash. Enoch's, maybe. Or someone else who handled the book when it still smoked from prophecy. Historians still argue whether texts attributed to Enoch were compiled over centuries or divinely transmitted in a single rush of inspiration. The truth, as always, probably lives somewhere between poetry and practicality. But here in this book, the lines aren't interested in theology. They tell stories, fragmented, vivid, terrifying, comforting. One reads, "And he taught them how to count without stones." Another, "She bore a son with eyes that glowed, and he asked the moon if it remembered him." A third, "The gate that opened wasn't a place, but a moment." You close the book gently. It doesn't latch. It doesn't need to. No one steals from a story that already lives inside you. Around the room, the other scrolls rustle. Not in wind, but in recognition. It's like they're whispering to each other, comparing notes, nudging one another with brittle corners. Somewhere behind you, a candle flickers to life, though you're not sure anyone lit it. And then a door appears. You didn't see it before, maybe it wasn't there. Maybe the book called it into being. You step through, and suddenly you're not in the past anymore. You're in a study, not yours, not anyone's in particular. It has a desk, a lamp, a potted plant that looks like it hasn't decided whether to live or die, and on the desk, a screen. Your reflection blinks back at you. You reach out, touch it. The screen flickers and text appears. Do you remember Enoch? You type back, I think so. Then you are part of the library now. You sit. The plant leans a little toward you. Maybe that's encouragement. Maybe it's just light. You glance around. The walls are bare, but inside your head, full. You remember the mountain, the feathers, the gourd, the woman whispering to the fish fin, the ash handprint, the fig tree that listened. Enoch never asked for believers. He never demanded temples or rituals. He just walked, wrote, listened. And somewhere in those quiet acts, he laid a trail not of miracles, but of memory. That's the real story, isn't it? That even in a world destined to drown, someone cared enough to write in the margins. You open a drawer. There's a pen. Of course there is, and a blank page. You smile, and you begin. You write without hesitation. The words don't come from your thoughts exactly. They drift in like steam through an open window. At first it's fragments, snippets of Enoch's walk, echoes of stories you've already heard, but soon your own voice emerges, crooked, unsure, but present. You jot down a phrase you remember from the tree by the river. The silence before the flood is a different kind of noise. It makes sense now. Enoch's world wasn't quiet. It hummed with warnings. Not the loud, blaring kind, but soft signals. A cloud that never moved. A shadow that didn't shift with the sun. Little things that whispered change long before thunder did. And you begin to feel it. Something pressing in, gently, like a dream asking permission to be remembered. The study seems smaller now, warmer. You realize the walls are no longer bare. They've filled themselves with illustrations, some familiar, others brand new. There's the Watchers again, this time mid-flight, chased by what looks like wind. There's Methuselah as a child offering a carved bird to a god made entirely of stars. There's a waterfall where none should be, and a ladder into the sky, half-built, paused mid-rung. You wonder if anyone else sees them. Probably not, but that's okay. Historians still argue whether Enoch was intended as allegory or origin story, whether his walk with God was literal or just a metaphor for spiritual insight. You decide it doesn't matter. Whether myth or man, his footsteps left an imprint, and now maybe yours will too. You rise from the desk, stretch your limbs, only mildly sore, which is impressive considering the cosmic journey you've just taken. The plant on the corner shelf has sprouted a new leaf. You choose to believe it's a good omen. The door reappears. This time you're not surprised. You pass through it like mist curling into dawn. Outside, the world is ordinary again, almost offensively so. pigeons squabble over breadcrumbs, a car honks at nothing. Somewhere someone's overwatering their lawn, but the ordinary doesn't feel dull anymore, it feels necessary, like the punctuation between chapters. You sit on a bench. The sky overhead is a polite shade of gray-blue. You imagine Enoch might have liked it. Cloudy enough to suggest mystery, bright enough to keep walking. You wonder what he'd think of your world. The metal boxes on wheels, the satellites, the coffee shops, the cat memes. Probably he'd nod once, smile a little, and say something like, "All roads are still roads." A child walks by, humming a tune you don't recognize. She carries a stick, tapping each fence post as if unlocking a code. You grin, she's probably not a prophet. But then again, neither was Enoch at first. You close your eyes, you can still hear the crunch of dry earth underfoot, the rustle of fig leaves, the whisper of languages no longer spoken but somehow understood. You're not sure when you'll come back to this memory. Maybe tonight, maybe a decade from now, maybe in a dream where fish wear crowns and stars remember your name. Either way, you've walked with Enoch. That's not nothing. Now the journey rests. Wind down. 300 words. So here you are, listener. Still quiet, warm in the afterglow of something very old and very gentle. You've wandered with a man whose footprints once whispered to the heavens, whose stories made it into books that almost didn't survive the flood, and you made it through the whole thing. Let your breathing slow now. No more cosmic ladders, no more secret scrolls, just the calm hush of a world that, even in its wildest legends, knows how to tuck itself in at night. The walls around you are soft, the air still. Maybe there's the distant hum of a fan, or the quiet shuffle of a tree branch brushing your window. It's okay to let go of the story now. Enoch is safe. The flood hasn't come yet, and your part, your reading, your wondering, your listening, that's been enough. You might feel a little heavier now, but in a good way. Like a blanket of old myths has settled over your chest. Familiar, comforting, not needing to be solved, just held. Let your thoughts float. Let your muscles loosen. And if your dreams tonight take you to fig groves and glowing stones and books that whisper, just nod and keep walking. Enoch will be there too.